Welcome to B&B Movie Reviews. This week, we let the spice flow with Dune Part 2. We take a ride with Kristen Stewart and Katie O'Brien as they build their love and busting some ghosts in the frozen empire.
Godzilla and Kong create a new empire, and Dev Patel seeks revenge. Stay right there. B&B is coming up next. This movie, I think from a filmmaking standpoint, from a technical standpoint, and we talked about this off air, when you look at all the different departments that are working in tandem with this movie, when it comes to the cinematography, when it comes to the sound, when it comes to the set design, the costuming, everything, it just feels like everything is just top notch.
It feels like a movie. You know, I feel like in the last batch of years, we've been seeing a lot of stuff, and I think a lot of this is as a result of streaming. But, you know, we're seeing a lot of like TV-like productions, right? Well, Dune Part 2 is a movie. You know, 5 minutes into this film, just absorbing the scale of it, I was in awe of it. And, you know, like, it's been a while since I felt that way sitting in a theater where the screen just enveloped my life, and I want more of that. What this film does so well is visually expose the internal life of these characters and playing a little bit with some magical realism, which was a great surprise.
Yeah, I wasn't really expecting that element of the story, but it's funny how it's like an onion. It's like as the movie starts to go along and you see there's certain shots and certain scenes and certain moments, you start to peel back the layer and you start thinking to yourself like, okay, where is this movie going? And then it goes to a place that I wasn't necessarily expecting, but if you go back and think about it, you kind of realize like they were kind of setting a lot of that stuff up in the beginning leading up to some of those moments.
So the climax isn't necessarily as big as a surprise as you might initially think.
If you're really following.
The first two Ghostbusters, especially the first Ghostbusters, is pretty perverted comedy, right? And I don't necessarily expect some of that perversion to remain in a sequel in 2024, but I do expect a lot of comedy and I expect a lot of absurdity. And I think what you see in both Afterlife and Frozen Empire is a lot of reverence for the original films. Like, these are filmmakers who were children when the first two came out. You know, I think a lot of us when we were kids, we watched this, we were like, this is serious business. And now they're treating it as like serious business. And I don't want that in my Ghostbusters.
Because I like the fact that you're bringing in the new Ghostbusters and bringing in kind of like the OG crew, and then they're kind of working together. I wish that we could have gotten a little bit more of the original Ghostbusters, because I mean, to be honest with you, I don't even know how invested I am. I love Paul Rudd and Carrie Coon. But I don't know how invested and McKenna Grace, who carries a lot of the kind of the A plot in this movie.
She has this entire plot that's apart from the rest of the film with a ghost-like character.
Which I thought was a little interesting.
Emphasis on the word little. We've entered into the Fast and the Furious phase of the Godzilla and Kong movies, and I am here for it. It's extremely silly. I do think that some of the human characters are not the most engaging, but that's okay because we're really here for the big ape, and this is Kong's movie, and there's massive sequences of this film where we're just with this ape, and you know, he can't speak to us. We have to like figure out what he's feeling, and we can. Like, it's a great animated character.
No, you're right, and that's the one thing that I appreciate the direction that Adam Wingard took. And I was listening to some conversations that he had leading up to the movie, and he said that we were going to have some long extended sequences with just the Titans, with no humans. And we get that in this movie, and those are probably the most compelling parts of the movie, and they pull it off. And we talked about it coming in, and you kind of know how I feel. Within this MonsterVerse, the legendary MonsterVerse movies, there's 5 films, and I'm more in tune with the tone that they had with the first 3 movies. And then since Adam Wingard has come in with Versus and now Godzilla Kong, I'm just like, this just isn't my jam. But going into this, I tried to kind of, change my, my train of thought. I had a lot of fun with this movie. It's goofy and silly as hell.
I'm so happy to hear that.
Yeah, it makes no sense logically. with
Hollow Earth, Bryan. Like, once you're like, you got to accept the premise of Hollow Earth. And once you accept the premise of Hollow Earth, you just got to go with it, right? There's that little like small baby ape titan in this film,
Zuko.
And when I was watching the trailers, I was like, who's this Jar Jar? I don't need this Jar Jar in my movie. And then it turns out he's the MVP.
He is. And you're so right. Watching the trailer, I was not really that taken by the character of Zuko. I was like, I don't know how this is going to play off. I'm not going to look forward to this. He comes into the movie and he's a little rascal in this.
And
he's one of the best parts. And then when you start to see the relationship that he starts to build with Kong throughout the story, it starts to become a really endearing relationship.
He is a naughty kid. Like when we first meet him, like he's almost villainous.
Yes.
And like that very kind of childish aggression and how he directs it towards Kong equals some of the funniest moments I've seen in a theater this year.
To me, I look at the previous era of Godzilla as far as like the Showa era, which was from the original film all the way up through the 70s, where we had a lot of those kind of silly Godzilla movies.
But still some great ones.
And some great ones. I'm not.
Don't besmirch in my Showa era.
I'm not. I love the Showa era. But it feels like that they're trying to make like a big budget Hollywood version of the Showa era.
Yeah, that sounds awesome.
Yeah, and I mean, and I'm on board for that. But the tone has just kind of lost me a little bit.
I think some things work and some things don't. Honestly, like my hope is the success of Godzilla Kong: The New Empire. Don't pronounce the X. Do not pronounce the X. I hope that the success of this will encourage them to make more Godzilla Kong movies in which they're the main characters.
Yes.
Less screen time for the people. I think what's great about the movie is that early on we understand that Dev Patel has gone through some sort of childhood trauma. We get a few flashes here and there, but we're not exactly sure. And the movie allows a lot of space for that story to reveal itself. So by the time you fully understand what's going on, you're in a different place than just like rooting for this guy to kick some butt.
This being his directorial debut, he is bringing in a lot of influences, and you can see a little bit of the John Wick influences, but he's not trying to make a John Wick movie. And also some of the directors that he's worked with, and he has mentioned Danny Boyle because he worked with him on Slumdog Millionaire, and you could see and feel a lot of Danny Boyle in what
like
he's
he
doing
takes
visually.
The camera, and we get some like first person shots in this film which are stunning, but like the camera is always on Dev Patel. Dev Patel has talked about this being an anthem for the marginalized, and that's what elevates this movie above something like John Wick, right? And again, I'm not going to disparage John Wick.
No, never.
A masterpiece of action cinema. But this movie, I think, also kind of tricks the audience into thinking like, hey, you're here for some bloodshed, but actually we're going to slow things down for a bit. And the last few shots of this movie don't have you cheering, right? When that directed by Dev Patel card comes up, you're like, huh, how do I feel? It's a little bittersweet.